Yep. We've just got a quorum. Welcome, good afternoon everybody to members of the committee and members of the public and media and staff. I'd like to open the 26th of May Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. Afternoon tea will be at 3 p.m. and for members of the public there is a tea trolley out in the foyer and feel free to come and go as you please. Everyone, please make sure your cell phones are turned off, and that includes not just turned on to vibrate either, because the speakers pick it up. All right, we have apologies from Councillor Wilson and Councillor Pascoe. I'm going to put in an apology for lateness for Councillor Gallagher as well, and for Her Worship the Mayor. And Councillors Green, Mallett and Forsyth need to leave early as well. So with that, I'll move that the apologies be accepted. Seconded by Councillor Tooman. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried. Right, confirmation of the agenda. With the leave of the committee, I'd like to bring the item 6, the biking plan, up straight after the public forum, and that is to accommodate the chair of that working group, Councillor Forsyth, as she needs to go to another engagement. So with that change, I will move that the agenda be confirmed. Can I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Forsyth, thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes, Councillor Mallett.
I'd just like to congratulate you. I think this might be the first agenda of this term that has got no confidential documentation in it.
Nothing to do with me.
Well done. Nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with me.
I withdraw my congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Mallett. Well, I could have taken
Clearly
it,
belongs somewhere else.
but you know.
I think it's the first meeting for 4 years.
All right, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that's carried. Right, so we're going to go, we're doing public forum first. I have one speaker, Aaron Wong from Generation Zero Waikato, and Aaron, you come down to the desk here and you're speaking on item 6, the biking plan. You've got 5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I am the Waikato spokesperson for Generation Zero. We're a youth organisation working towards minimising our environmental impact through building smarter cities with congestion-free and active transport. Item 6 on today's agenda is the report to Council on the draft biking plan. Generation Zero welcomes and encourages this initiative to support and grow the accessibility and usability of Hamilton's cycling infrastructure. Hamilton has a huge opportunity to develop world-class cycle infrastructure, and that started with the ring road, the shed path on the ring road, the Te Awa River Ride, which also goes through the Hamilton city, and I think the upcoming shed path along the railway in the west. The Council must understand that cycle infrastructure must be usable for commuting and leisure, and will be used as such, and it needs to be accessible by people of all ages. The provision of safe off-road cycling is extremely important to growing cycling mode share, especially amongst school children. Now, this has huge potential to significantly reduce school run congestion, as well as building good habits of active transport, which has health benefits and congestion benefits, and obviously inspires a whole generation. The network presented in the report is, in our opinion, not extensive enough. Hamilton needs a network with good coverage, and this goes beyond just main trunk routes and arterial routes. It also needs to reach into communities and be more accessible to people. Continued growth in car use is not sustainable, and as such, building our way out of congestion is not a practical option. Through liaising with the Waikato Regional Council on public transport and developing cycle infrastructure, more efficient and sustainable transport can be delivered for a more livable city. And this will greatly help with the development of the city over the next years to actually accommodate the growth in population. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Committee, are there any questions for Aaron? Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. You said the route plan is not extensive enough. Have you got sort of ideas, not necessarily the exact streets or anything, but the type of areas you'd like to see covered additionally in the primary network map there?
When we looked at the primary network map, we saw that actually it covers quite a few arterials, but it doesn't cover each arterial, because it's not like catching a bus where you walk to the bus stop. When you're on that bike, you go from point to point, and as much of it as possible you can do in a safe cycle lane or a separated cycle lane, which we don't have in Hamilton, but they've been developing in Auckland, or on a shared path. The more likely people are to actually cycle, and the safer it will be for them, which I think has benefits throughout the community.
So pretty much all arterial routes should be on it in your...
Most arterial routes, they don't all have to be to the same standard, but to actually provision this, and especially through some of the more dangerous intersections, there needs to be priority for cycles, especially and pedestrians as well, because a lot of the larger intersections are not very friendly for anyone other than road users, well, motor vehicles.
Yeah. What about high schools, for instance? Should they be priority routes?
I think they should. High schools especially, because a lot of parents wouldn't, even if it was safe, and it isn't as it is, wouldn't let their primary school age children or intermediate school age children actually cycle. But with high school, that's when youth are trying to find more independence, and also parents are not actually as available to take the children. I think that reduce those car journeys and reduce congestion.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Councillor Tooman.
What's the membership of your organisation?
The membership of our organisation nationwide, we're not a membership group where we have to pay a fee, so we don't have formal records like that. But in terms of people who have responded to our campaigns and people who are actively engaged just through social media and through our website and mailing list, it's in the region of, I think, 20,000. However, we are quite small in the Waikato because we haven't had key drivers behind that, but as a national organisation we work together to effect change in our own communities and together.
And do you are you associated with Cycle Action Waikato?
We're not formally associated with Cycle Action Waikato, but we agree in principle with a lot of their advocacy, and we also consult with them when developing campaign policies. And I think a lot of advocacy networks do that sort of thing, like Living Streets and Cycle Action.
Councillor Forsyth.
Thank you. Thanks, Aaron, for your presentation. So, in a nutshell then, are you supportive of the biking plan, but it just doesn't go far enough? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I think everything that's in there is certainly very helpful and is in the right direction, but we need to go further to actually, instead of trying to catch up to where everyone else is, to actually go forward and become a leader in this. We've got, in Cambridge, we've got the velodrome, which is actually part funded by Hamilton City ratepayers. We've got the Chawa River Ride. We can become a cycling mecca because it's so flat and you can just get everywhere by bike. And that lessens the congestion, so we don't have to build so many expensive roads.
That's, yes, I quite agree. Just to clarify, I think the fact that Hamilton City ratepayers only have contributed to funding of the velodrome through their representation as regional council ratepayers. Yeah.
And a lot of ratepayers aren't aware of that even.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right, lovely. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. Right, committee, before we go on to item 6, the bike plan, sorry, I forgot item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. Great. Okay, so item 6, the bike plan, and this was circulated, emailed on Friday and a hard copy yesterday. So you should all have the report and the plan. And Chris, and welcome Harry Wilson. And for those of you who don't know, Harry is the Regional Director for Waikato Bay of Plenty NZTA. So welcome.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll hand over to Harry to say a few words in a moment, but I'd just like to put some context. So today we're presenting to committee the draft biking plan. It's intended, and the recommendations intend that it goes out for a period of further public engagement and following consideration of any feedback, to present the final biking plan for approval to the 11th of August Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. So look, I'll take the report as read in terms of the content of the biking plan, but I just wanted to put some context around the development of the plan, if I may. So in 16th of July 2014, Council nominated representatives to sit on a working group, Councillors Forsyth, Tooman, McPherson and Gallagher, with external stakeholders as well, Sport Waikato, Bike New Zealand and representatives from NZTA. So it was quite a wide sort of a working group that's helped develop this plan, and along the way they've consulted with a wide range of stakeholders, and they're listed in paragraph 19 of the report. So the biking plan, very important that it takes the 30-year view in terms of developing a biking network to align with Council's current sort of planning horizon. Implementation of this plan will occur progressively over this time period as opportunities, including funding opportunities, arise. Look, I believe that this biking plan is really important and that it sets out a clear statement of our biking aspirations for all stakeholders and ourselves. You know, what biking facilities we have now and how we can optimise them, and what the city's likely to be in 30 years' time, and what role biking can play in transportation and leisure in 30 years' time. It's also really important, I think, to have a plan that's integrated, that pulls together not just only the infrastructure issues which tend to dominate at times, but also the education and safety initiatives and community engagement, and I think this plan does that. This plan, as we've talked about in one of the briefings, will be a significant reference point for my transport team as we go around and in our day-to-day transport operational activities. So when we're resurfacing the road or we're rebuilding roads, we're making intersection improvements or some of our large transport projects, I think this document will become quite an important reference point in terms of standards that are suitable for Hamilton and just where on the network the improvements may be. Just concluding that, look, there's been some commentary in recent times that Council is not investing in its network. Look, I don't think that's true. Look, as we've just heard from Aaron, look, over the past few years, we've built some of the finest walking and biking facilities as part of the Waiari Drive Ring Road project. We're looking to continue this through to Cobham Drive and the Gardens in the near future. We're working with NZTA very closely on the Waikato Expressway project and our Resolution Drive project to ensure there are high quality and appropriate walking and cycling facilities in the north of the city. We're also working really closely on a number of fronts, but particularly in Rotatuna with the development community, particularly around the area of the new school, to ensure that there are first-class walking and biking opportunities that align with this plan. NZTA, our transport partner, is investing heavily, and they've just put the one of the key links on Kahikatea Drive in terms of the off-road cycleway, and they're looking at State Highway 3 as well, after a number of years of advocacy from this council to put some facilities on State Highway 3. So there is a lot of work happening in the biking plan. Having a well-defined biking plan, in my opinion, is an essential prerequisite for taking advantage of opportunities, and particularly funding opportunities that exist now and will exist in the future, where we can find opportunities to leverage partnerships to continue developing the network. So look, Harry from NZTA has kindly agreed to make himself available today, hopefully to talk to us about some of those opportunities and how central government is currently thinking about investment in biking. So if I may hand over to Harry.
Yep, sure.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors and Madam Chair, an opportunity to talk to you. I haven't actually been for quite a while. So I thought I'd actually, you don't often get something free from the NZTA, so I thought I'd bring there, not only hear the video, but here's a T-shirt.
Wow.
See the person share the
Councillor
road?
McPherson, do you have one of those ones?
There's one here.
Long
a number of
relationship
sizes.
with
I think they were
NZTA.
one from 5 years ago.
Exactly.
Over.
Recycle right now.
Point of order, do these go down as a...
Bribes,
Yeah.
inducements, yeah, they're really good, yeah. So look, there's just a few here, but I mean, the message here is see the person, share the road. You know, it's a very successful campaign we've been running because some of the safety aspects that we have with people trying to share a common space, and cyclists and trucks don't mix. Okay, so what I just want to talk to you a little bit about is, first of all, I'm really pleased to be here actually talking about cycling and not about roads. It's actually a really nice thing. From time to time, I've been criticised.
First time ever.
I've been
Yeah.
criticised for saying, you know, that NZTA is all about roads. I'll put that in context. The government policy statement of the last few years is about economic growth, unreservedly, unapologetically. So this means a lot of investment in social mobility, and some of the good things have not been a priority for the government. And they've been unapologetic about that up till now, and I stress up to now. Because at the time of the economic recession, the investment in things like the expressway and those things that accelerate an economy is very important. They're now focusing more on balance. So how do we make sure we're getting a balanced investment around New Zealand? So hence the investment in urban cycleways. It's a really good opportunity, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where you get that government stepping outside the National Land Transport Fund to make a decision about investing differently to their policy statement. So you have a really unique opportunity here. I would urge you to invest in the plan. Hamilton, as you've heard me say, you know, I'm very passionate about the growth of Hamilton, the Waikato region and the Bay. You have probably some of the record investment coming towards you in terms of expressway development that's going to mean more people are going to want to live here, work here, play here. And what will they expect? You've got a flat city. They'll expect the kind of mobility that this kind of wonderful environment encourages. They'll expect their children to be able to cycle safely. They'll expect to be able to recreate on the weekends, and they expect to cycle, walk, and use the passenger transport systems that we have. So as as you face this prospect of managing growth, which is a fantastic problem to have because not many local governments do, you've got to make sure you get the balance right between making sure you're encouraging. It's not a substitution. It's not about taking people necessarily off the roads to go on bicycles. It's actually about making it a livable place where people want to cycle for health reasons as much as it is about good transport outcomes. I stress what the other speaker just before me said, actually. If I had one dream in this kind of space is to get back to the days when I grew up and you could cycle to school. You know, we think it's not about people cycling to work. It's actually where our network gets congested is around parents driving their children to and from schools. So, but that starts with getting the strategic parts of your network right, and then you can slowly and progressively invest over time to reach further into your communities, as the previous speaker mentioned. But you've got to start with strategic network, and that means building a whole network. So having a plan, a very sensible place to start, but most importantly, investing in the completeness of a plan. So you're about 70%, my take, of the strategic elements of a cycle network. You've got about 30% to finish. That's not to say the job is done. As I said, you've still got to stretch into the communities, but finish your main arterial and your connectors through this. You know, you've only got to look around New Zealand to see the mistakes that New Zealand has made by getting 3/4 of a job done. The Western Ring Route. You know, we're now investing $2.2 billion to finish the last bit that someone should have done 20 years ago. The electrification of the north line, you know, of the main trunk. You know, who in their right mind stops a main trunk electrification at Hamilton and Palmerston? You know, it's next to useless. You know, so if you're going to make a network, you've got to join up a network. So you've got an opportunity here to make a decision to endorse a plan. You know, so I can't speak more highly. It's a good plan. It's sensible. You get capitalising off the investments around some major capital works. You've got a government that's, you know, rough order of figure here. That the costs are probably around $4 million to complete it. Government's going to put $3 million on the table. We're putting $500,000. And so you're looking at a $5 million investment to leverage $3.5 million. It's a good bet. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you. And just before we start questions with Councillor McPherson, as Chair, Councillor Forsyth of the working group, would you like to make some comments at this point?
Oh, thank you very much, Harry, for your contribution this morning, and I think it's just fantastic that we've been able to hear firsthand the position that NZTA is in, not only from the city's point of view, but regionally as well. And as I said, I'm sure there'll be questions from councillors, but really appreciate your input and the priority that NZTA has given to cycling as well.
All right, so we're going to open the floor up to questions. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, and thanks also to Councillor Forsyth for chairing the committee, and I think it went quite well, so thank you. It's good to see you here, Harry, talking about things other than roads.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
As you said.
Yep.
It's unusual, but it's good. I want to ask actually the General Manager about the things like, he mentioned the partnership in Rototuna around the new school with the developers and others in that area, which brings to mind the issues we have about existing schools and cycleways there, and how important that is in the council's planning in terms of a practical outcomes. We've got a 30-year plan here, or something that fits into a 30-year plan. What's happening in the next 3 years in terms of investment that isn't sort of, you know, footpath on the side of an arterial road that we happen to be doing? What special funding is there for cycling in our 10-year plan in the next 3 years?
So the only fund that we have in the 10-year plan, apart from some of the capital projects I've spoken about, is our discretionary transport fund. So we have about $900,000 of local share there, with an opportunity to leverage an NZTA
Over what
subsidy
period?
every year. So that would be $9 million roughly over the 10-year period. Of course, that's a fund that's got to do a multitude of things, or got a multitude of priorities for that fund. So there are decisions that councillors are making on a year-by-year basis. The previous year, council put together a working party to work with staff to how to spend that funding. But that fund was intended for things like walking and cycling, like public transport, and some of the more integrated sort of transport initiatives.
School travel plans, etc., things like that?
We have a school travel plan program outside that funding. That's more of an operational cost, and it's our staff input into working with schools.
So have staff put together a proposed spending plan for that 10 years from that 9 million on an annual basis, so that there's something for us to have a look at, rather than just, as you said, on an annual basis, us having a little bit of a look in amongst 500 other items that come in front of us when we do the annual plan?
Yeah. The practice has been to propose something to the working group in the year in advance and get the working group looking at that. I think the previous year it came to strategy and policy for guidance on what areas to spend the money, and then the detail of that was worked through in the working group. But at the moment, it's just been a year-by-year approach, not a 10-year look at how you would spend that money.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering if on that front we could have that as an item coming up on our agenda, the 10-year spending plan from within our budget, so we can have a look holistically at the whole period and with some suggestions or recommendations from staff.
Yep.
Yeah, particularly in terms of the proportion and the sort of spending areas for cycling. I had one other question. You talked about how, Chris, the plan would guide things like, and you mentioned specifically intersection improvements when you're doing reseals and intersection upgrades and things. I have to ask, why isn't that being done at the moment? The example that sort of sticks in my mind is right near the Fairfield College is the Clarkin Road, Heafy Terrace, and whatever the other road is, intersection, Hukanui. No, it's not Hukanui. What is it there? Whatever the other one is, with 3 roads going in there. A new roundabout's been put in the last 2 years, and new seal, and the cycleways still, just like they did before, end short of the intersection, with cyclists being left to sort of go up and mingle with pedestrians on the footpath if they are of a mind to go off the road, or to fight with cars at the intersection. Now, that's just an example. There's quite a few others where the same sort of thing has happened, and the improvements haven't, but the opportunities haven't been taken. I would have thought you didn't need a plan to know that there were gaps in our cycleways.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a general answer, but I can assure you that every improvement we make on the network does have cycle thought and input go into it. I think it can be a challenging issue around intersections and how you treat intersections, and sometimes through all the constraints, the only option is to put them in the lane and take them through the intersections. But this plan is intending to do a little bit more work on those technical standards with the current stakeholders that we're engaging with now to get more alignment on some of those technical solutions. So that's part of this plan, is the technical standards as well that we can follow. But we do give consideration to walking and cycling on any improvement we make on the network.
So if someone is cycling along a road like, say, Clarkin Road, and the cycle lane peters out and there's no more cycle signs, they're to assume they're suddenly in the same lane as cars without any warning?
And as a general answer, probably yes, that has been the decision. But I guess the work is to get more alignment. Like one thing I've found in cycling is you'll get different opinions from different groups about what the appropriate cycling treatment is. And myself and Councillor Forsyth went on that defensive cycling course that you put me on to, Councillor McPherson, and we had an interesting conversation at a couple of intersections, and one of the issues that was highlighted was the differences of opinion of the cyclist group about how you should treat an intersection. The Lycra Brigade will have a different view, and the
Technical term versus.
yeah. So I think everyone understands it. So I think I think our view is more to cater for the general cyclist, and Councillor Forsyth is keen for us to develop standards that cater more for that, and I think that's some of the work ahead of us to come to an agreement on what is the appropriate balance to strike at that intersection.
Thanks.
Councillor Mallett.
Thanks very much. And I am aware that this is going out for public consultation, so I guess I just want to raise some issues that I'd like to hope that over the consultation process we'll get answers back to these things, and they're kind of somewhat bigger questions, I guess. I'm concerned about, firstly, the conflagration between, and I've said this before, biking for fitness stroke leisure versus biking for commuting. And we hear a lot about how we're getting fitter and lots of stuff and lovely bike lanes, and none of that addresses the congestion issue. If we have a congestion issue, none of that addresses the congestion issue. So the two things sort of get woven in together, and it makes it a little bit difficult to separate the two if you want to make sort of precise decision making. Secondly, I don't know if there's any research done into here about possible changes in transport technology which are at our doorstep now, and that is things like driverless cars, and I think you pronounce it Uber or something. It's that new taxi system, which I can see will quite possibly, both of those two issues could be a boom in terms of reducing congestion. I mean, if you've got people who are prepared to pick up as many kids as you can fit into car, because at the moment you're dead right, parents drop their kids at school, and often parents are dropping one kid at one school, whereas if you had this sort of Uber thing where you can get a carload of kids being dropped off. I don't think the report covers that at all, and I guess that's because you're focusing at it from a cycling point of view rather than. Well, I'm not sure if you're looking at reducing congestion, and also the thing, the macro point of view here is that people just aren't using bikes, and your own research says that. In 2001, exactly the same number of people, 75% of employees weren't riding to work. Still the same. Yet in that decade or so, I don't know, millions of dollars have been spent on cycle lanes and improvements to make the roads safer and more efficient for cyclists. So, there's the mantra, build it and they will come. There's lots and lots of stadiums around the country and lots of other projects, local authority projects, where build it and they come was the mantra, and it hasn't worked. And I'm concerned that we're seeing this happening already with the cycling. And your own research also says that since 1990, the numbers riding a bike to school have declined by 75%. So that's people of their own volition, making their own choices, even though the infrastructure has been upgraded, not as upgraded as this plan foresees, but certainly the infrastructure has been improved. And when I was a kid, and when we all were kids, I don't think roads were made for bikes at all.
Councillor Millett, sorry to interrupt you reminiscing on when you were a child, but do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I'm just wanting to make sure that our research is picking these, that you can answer, for me anyway, you can argue, yep, spending millions of dollars on roads on cycle lanes will actually make a difference. Because I'm very, very concerned that, I live on River Road, which is a pretty busy road, and there's not a lot of cyclists on there. It's a huge, there's a lot of commuting, but there's not many people coming down on bikes. And I bet 10 years earlier there were more, and yet you've got, it's a little safer now because you've got the white lines and people are a little more aware of cyclists, and there's been untold educational programs, and most cyclists, not all, but most cyclists now wear high-vis gear and all that sort of stuff. But it just hasn't made a change in behaviour. So I, as someone who cares about the public purse, I would be very concerned that we're not tilting at windmills.
Okay, look, last year New Zealand imported 400,000 bicycles. 2 years ago they imported 260,000. So the sheer number of people cycling is increasing dramatically.
But why isn't it reflected in these
Hang on,
figures
hang on,
here?
Excuse me?
Councillor.
So I'm just, that's numbers of bicycles coming into the country. God knows where they're going, but people are using them. So the first thing. The second thing around network capacity, so you're saying, part of the logic is that the reason to invest in a cycleway is to increase network capacity for the benefit of road users, right? Okay, so that's what we're saying. So cycling as a mode transfer, you're absolutely right. People aren't going to necessarily, you're not going to make a jot of dent from your cycle network, really, in terms of shifting network capacity. You haven't done it in PT for the last 10 years. Passenger transport sat at about 2% of people going to work on the passenger transport system. But there's a whole lot of other reasons why people use buses, why they cycle, why they walk. And it's not just about feeling good. So one of the rationales about economic growth is direct benefits and indirect benefits. So one of the reasons that people will come to Hamilton is because it's a great place to live. It's safe. People make choices around those kind of things. So one of the big idea here is to create a network that actually increases the livability of the city, that creates and induces economic development as well. So you've got to look at those kind of aspects of what you're doing. I preface that by saying this is about balanced investment. I sit there and watch Auckland, and Auckland has this constant battle between if we take money off the roading and we put it into buses, if we take money off buses and put it into rail, if we take it off rail and put it into cycling. Actually, the answer, like anything, is a sensible bit of pragmatic investment in all things. But the most important thing is have a plan. So you're not reacting to a development or whatever it may be. And that's what you've got on the table, is you're looking at a 30-year plan that provides balance to the increased capacity and investment in your roading network. And that's not a stupid thing to do.
Right, thank you. Councillor Forsyth.
You're saying...
Question, not...
Yeah, it is. Despite... So you're saying it's a good thing to do, even... So you're taking the reducing congestion thing off the table, saying, yep, hands up, I agree. Not many more people are going to go onto a bike because we're spending these millions of dollars. Not many more people will go from car to a bike because we're spending that money, but it makes it a nicer place to live.
Basically, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Forsyth.
I have a question for Harry. Can you just tell me where the national guidelines and technical specifications work is at? I understand that that's a piece of work in progress. Is that
For
cycling infrastructure?
Oh, look, I have to find out. I just don't have the information
Okay.
at my...
Okay then.
Catherine
Chris, do you
might
have-
know
I can ask.
Sorry, Catherine, can you speak up?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So that piece of work is being worked on by the National Cycling Team, and that's due at the moment to be released mid-next year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tooman.
Oh, sorry, I have
Oh, sorry,
one more other
Councillor
question.
Forsyth. Yep.
For Chris, so just following up from what Councillor McPherson was asking around our existing specifications. So where what's the source, or where do we take our cycling technical standards from currently here at council?
So we have standards in our infrastructure technical specifications. So they're largely off-road and generally accepted transportation sort of guidelines and standards. So I think the idea is to take those, because a lot of those are sensible, but it's customising that for Hamilton.
And when, I'm just sort of trying to gauge how current that document is it?
It's pretty, so New Zealand's a signatory to this thing called Austroad, so it sets technical specification for everything from pavement design to geometry of roading, curves, pavement design, cycling facilities, bridges, structures, so
Okay.
New Zealand's a small country, so we rely on best practice, but equally New Zealand's different. So an example on the roading network where we are different to Australia is we have really tight curves. So New Zealand's geometry around curvature, particularly in some of its networks, is very different to some of those standards you'd find in Australia. So that there is a degree of customisation that has to be made between the two.
So has the world changed in cycling terms or cycling standard terms since that document was produced?
Not dramatically, no, I don't think so. But again, it's a matter, you're always constantly revising and looking at these things. I mean, the difference, there's two things going. One is how do you make every intersection safe? There's a difference between those. It's like your major intersections on a road network. There's a difference about the form and function. So if you're making a connection on a strategic cycle network, it's a very different one to one on not saying that anything should be less equal in terms of safety, but when it's a cycle, you might you separate or you do different things, you have different types of treatments.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tooman.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Question for Harry. Well, first off, it's a pretty good plan, this one, as far as I can see. And the consultation which has all been done is really, cycling's here to stay. It's a new golf, as I call it. And if we can just get this, what I call the school link underway, which is your Hukanui Road, Peach Cove Road, where you've got 9,500 students every day travel that route to go to one of the 15 schools along that route. And Harry, a few years ago, funding was reduced to road safety coordinators and to the travel planning people. So it's all very well having the environment correct, but what we really need, of course, is the education of these kids as to how to use that environment. Do you see that there will be an increase maybe in funding to territorial local authorities for our road safety coordinators and maybe our school travel planners to coincide with this?
Yeah, look, that's always the prerogative of government to decide how to invest. In this sense, they haven't changed their direction. They're still keen under the GPS, the guiding policy, to stimulate economic growth. That's what it's all about. In this case, they've made a deliberate decision to actually say, okay, we will step outside of the National Land Transport Fund and invest in urban cycling networks. So what they're looking for is a complete solution. The investment is to support a plan. It's not for so any councillor puts up, a half a network or quarter of a network or a particular A to B point, they're not going to win. This is about completing a network, and as I said, the only reason you'll get on the table is you've got 70% of it done. So you're closing the last 30%. So there's not many councils in that position. That's why you're up at the table.
Okay. And one other question, we can probably look forward to a Hamilton Rail Trail, which will probably not as large as the Otago one or the Hauraki one, but it'll still bring in the lake area and all that over a period of time, because we're currently going through the lake management review and all that sort of stuff. So it really opens things up.
You look at the success of Te Awa, look at the Hauraki Rail Trail, the South Waikato District Rail Trail. When apart from the urban side, this is about urban stuff. But I go out on the weekend and you're going to sit on the Hauraki Rail Trail and thousands of people going past you. The world's shifted, and they do.
Sure. Thank you.
I just have a quick question on, I'm really interested in the school link, and in the back of the plan it's got 16 schools. How many schools are not proposed to be in this? I don't know how many schools we have in the city, but
So,
as a proportion, I guess.
look, I think those are just the schools that come off that corridor. that
Yeah,
Peach
yeah, I
Road-
know,
Road
but
corridor.
I guess
I think
as
there's
a-
something like 50
Okay.
schools in the city from memory when we did
just
our
over.
electronic side. I think just to comment, I think over a period of time, council's got more than just the primary network and the secondary network that you see here. There has been a lot of work done around our school gates, and a lot of that work has been around cycling to particular schools. So sitting in underneath this primary and secondary network, there are some walking and cycling facilities to school, and it sort of started or integrated with the school travel planning and the variable 40k speed signs. But I know from my own personal experience and the kids, the schools my kids went to, there were great cycling trails to get people to Myra School and some of the other schools. So there is a lot of stuff that already exists
Yeah.
in the network. I think it's enhancing that over time as well, and not forgetting about some of those issues.
And will this school link be all off-road or a mixture of off and on?
Look, I think that's the challenge in front of
Right,
us
okay.
putting up there. Like
Yeah.
this is clearly the opportunity is here now, because we've built the ring road, and the transfer of traffic off Peach Grove Road has been enormous onto the ring road, and we've always said this is our opportunity now to retrofit that road to be more conducive to public transport and reflective of the schools along that road.
Okay, thank you. Right, any further questions? Councillor Mallett?
Just a real precise, when you talked about a bike trail to Myral.
Yep.
So just explain what that is.
So I live in the west side of Hamilton, over by
Yep.
Dinsdale, and apart from the Dinsdale roundabout, my kids could get onto Rifle Range Road. There's a cycle trail, all the cycle lane on
You mean
the
lane?
highway,
Okay, yeah.
on the road, all the way down Rifle Range Road. You get to the state highway intersection now. There's underpasses that NZTA built, or Transit built, a few years ago when someone was working there, that allow the
A man of vision and forethought.
that allow the kids to go right under the state
Conflict of
highway,
interest to me.
up onto Norton Road, joins another cycle trail, gets onto Myra Road,
Okay.
cycle trail into the school zone.
So have
So
you
it's a
spoken
really-
to the NZTA about the Dinsdale roundabout?
Now's your chance.
That was, as a parent, that was my challenge and my fear as young kids getting across that area. Yeah,
Pity that previous NZTA manager didn't do something
I
about it.
know, I know.
they got rid of them.
Yeah, that's why I fired him.
Thank you.
All right, there've been no further questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor King.
On point 7 on the covering document, Hamilton has a poor road safety record. What's that? Is that traffic accidents? I mean, I can see the bike accidents on paragraph 29. What does that comment mean? Hamilton has a poor road safety record. Is that referring to cycles? Is it referring to vehicle crashes? Is it referring to ACC statistics on accidents?
So I think, sorry, can I just be clear where you're talking about? Councillor King?
Paragraph 7.
Paragraph 7, sorry, yeah. So look, the context of this report is biking crashes. So we talked about those in one of the briefing where I had the recorded crash statistics for cyclists on the Hamilton network, where we had, a couple of fatal accidents, about 9 average serious injury accidents per year, and a whole range of other minor injuries. So when you compare that to other comparable cities, we're higher. So we do have a poor safety record. And the context for that comment was in relation to biking.
So cycling injuries in Hamilton are higher than in other populations of cities.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right, do I have well, the recommendation is in, on page 11.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Forsyth. Councillor Forsyth, are you happy to include in C there that we put the date there, staff report back to the 11th of August 2015 Strategy and Policy Committee meeting? Okay, and do I have a seconder for that? Councillor McPherson. Right, open it up for any debate. Councillor Forsyth, you're first.
Thank you. I've just prepared, I've written something down. Are you happy for me to read it?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, our city is one of the fastest growing cities in New Zealand. We're a youthful city and we're a family-friendly city. And this draft bike plan, which I know you've all taken the time to read and digest, meets many of our city's economic, recreational and livability aims. It will serve us today and it will serve us for the future. I've chaired a working group for this plan, and that group has been represented by NZTA, Bike New Zealand, Sport Waikato, councillors Truman, Gallagher, McPherson and Green in the early stages, and staff. And a wider stakeholder group has also contributed, as you'll see in the report. I want to share with you our vision for Hamilton's biking plan. I encourage you to see the economic and lifestyle benefits of a well-connected, safe, fit-for-purpose biking network, and that it's something that our city needs. The economic benefits of implementing the bike plan are, just a few, a wider, more integrated use of our existing roading network. It's more cost-effective, or it's a more cost-effective form of transport infrastructure as opposed to roading. Increased productivity as a result of lower commute and travel times. By integrating the bike plan with our existing roading network development, the costs for biking infrastructure is reduced and the need to widen or build more costly roads is delayed. Compare the cost of building a kilometre of road, anywhere from $2 million to $12 million per, as I said, per kilometre. A kilometre of 3 metre wide bike path will set you back anywhere from $360,000 to $450,000. Think 5, 10, 15 or 30 years into the future as this plan looks to. The more people that we can encourage to bike, to commute or get around the city, the less congested our roads will be. This means the more time people can spend contributing to the economy, spending time with their families, spending time doing the things that they like to do, recreating, having time, an enjoyable time in the city. The biggest barrier to many people interested in biking around the city is safety. And in a recent Hamilton City Council biking survey, 60% of respondents said they would bike more often if our biking infrastructure was safe, by being protected or segregated from vehicles, from having well-maintained bike paths. The key projects outlined in the biking plan address safety. Let's talk about the school link. The Peach Grove Hukanui Road link is one example. Parents are currently too concerned about safety to allow their children to bike to school. By providing a safe bike route for up to 15 schools and potentially 9,500 school children, the biking plan will address the concerns of parents. In the school holidays, traffic relief is evident to us all. You don't have to be a parent of school-aged children to know when the school holidays are on. The reduced travel times at peak hours in the city are extremely noticeable. So Hamilton's reputation as an easy city to live in, with attractive green spaces, with our world-famous Hamilton Gardens, our high-quality destination playgrounds and a bold, beautiful river plan will be enhanced even further with Hamilton's biking plan. Attractive, enjoyable biking networks that link with Te Awa and major destinations in the city, networks that are well signposted, have bike-friendly infrastructure like drinking fountains, bike racks, and even wheel ramps to take your bike up a flight of stairs instead of carrying it. All of these things fit together to make Hamilton even that much more of a wonderful, beautiful, livable city to live in. So in conclusion, I'm asking every councillor to support our city's biking plan, our vision for a bike-friendly city, not only for today, but for well into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Forsyth. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I support the comments that Councillor Forsyth has made. I make a couple of additional ones, though. Firstly, in terms of public engagement, I'm not sure the format that's going to take place, and I did express this at the Working Party, I think we need to open that out more, the public input into this, because that leads to my second point, which is that I don't think this plan is worth anything at all unless it's acted on, and acted on seriously. And I would rather this council didn't have yet another plan unless we were willing to put that into practice, and we can only do that fairly if the public has been heavily involved. If we just have a few submissions, written submissions to staff, or staff just go off and see a few ginger groups in the background and have discussions with them, well-meaning as they might be, it's not going to help us actually get a plan like this, and not going to help us see whether the public is willing to make that a priority in terms of council spending. So I say to all of us, unless we have a commitment to hearing what they have to say and ensuring that they want us to have that commitment, then it's not worth it. I also say to NZTA, we need more than nice words. I know there's this fund going on at the moment, but there's been funds dangled in front of this council in the past to do with cycling that didn't eventuate. I can recall one in particular where Hamilton was asked in writing to put in a request for funding for a model cycling city, it was called, and we got nothing. And the letter that was written to us, the first copy of, the second copy had that part changed. The letter that was written to us said because we were too large, i.e. it would cost too much to make Hamilton a model cycling city back about 5 years ago. So I'm suspicious until I see the colour of your money, Harry, or your boss's money, not to put too fine a point on it. There isn't any point having these good plans unless we can actually put them into place. So that's a challenge, in my opinion, to us and to the government agencies. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers? Councillor Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to commend the chair of our cycling group, Councillor Forsyth, and her work, and commend the staff. And I noticed that our plan talks about a 30-year vision. And obviously what we do want to get, and I think we're within range of getting some runs on the board, that's very important. I think we also need to acknowledge under previous councils the progress that we've actually made to date. And when I was previously an MP, I went to a cycling conference, I think it was on the North Shore, and it was Hamilton and Christchurch were actually acknowledged as actually one of the better two local authorities, but we've still got, obviously I accept, a way to go. And I think Councillor Mallett touched on it, and it was a very useful intervention, Madam Chair, in terms of his historic reminiscence. You know, when he was that stellar student at Hamilton Boys High School.
Despite your teaching.
Sadly, aspects of my teaching didn't quite hit the mark. But,
very good.
But you're right in the sense that you know, we rode to school, and we rode actually pre-crash helmet, and either we were not wrapped up, or we were not risk averse or something. And in my case, I rode right across the middle of the main street over the railway bridge, etc., etc.
No hand.
Day and, yeah.
Look, Mum, no hand.
Well, yeah, not quite. But I think it's now, of course, as parents, you relate to the fact that you do have and it's natural. You have a natural concern about the safety of your kids. So, I'm personally really keen to see growth of the off-road cycleways. I'm really keen to look at cities overseas, Portland, but in Europe, where I guess it's going to take probably another generation to get people back on their cycles, particularly around that commuting side. I think one of the great advances and advantages of things like the velodrome and the Te Awa River Ride is that there's been an absolute uptake in recreational cycling. That's what I clicked on. And then that recreational cycling starts to transfer to commuter type cycling, you know, when the weather's good. when other conditions are good, when there's a perception of safety. So I think the two, if you like, are intertwined. And I think it will be, dare I say it, a slow, gradual process. But if you'd even said, say, 5 years ago, if you had predicted the incredible uptake in this country now of recreational cycling, for example, even 5 or 6 years ago, I think you'd have been quite surprised at the progress that we have made. And it would be nice that the blue government can also be a green government on this one. The red greens are fine, but you know, it's good to see the blue government become a bit greener, hopefully, and I would strongly encourage them, and I do hope to see my local government MPs on a bike as well when they ride to their respective electorate offices as a result of our plan.
Well said, Councillor. Councillor Mallett.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm very, very concerned. Again, I'm looking at the dollars, and I'm concerned that what we have before us is a lovely, lovely dream that completely averts reality. It completely ignores what has happened over the last 10 years, ignores the potential changes in technology with regards to vehicles, where I think vehicles will become more efficient, and also just putting a macabre slant on this thing. I don't know how many, it won't take many kids getting badly injured on a bike before everyone goes straight back to taking their kids to school. So it's a very high risk strategy as well. I mean, you can try and change perceptions on people. You can have, you know, the little bubble around the, you know, signs with a little bubble around the cyclists saying we're going to protect them. We can have white painted lines, but all it takes is someone driving along, texting, veering over into the kids, and wham, and there'll be a horrible tragedy. And I tell you what, everyone will start taking their kids back into the cars, and no amount of spending or infrastructure and bikes will get kids back. Will parents let their kids go back to school on bikes? The other side of it, though, I do understand the recreational side, and that I can see there is some. I can see that will grow, and that is reality. That there are more and more people using bikes recreationally. Whether or not that is sufficient for us to be spending, I haven't seen any figures, but the sorts of figures I assume will be attached with this project is yet to be determined. So I will be might be supporting this.
Right, any further speakers? Hang on, let me see if there's anyone else, because we're in debate. I just wanted to say a few words. I'm not sure where Councillor Mallett was going around calling the plan high risk, given some of the things that we heard Harry say around, and Chris say around road safety. And the school plan is certainly one of the things that excites me. There's far too many cars on the road dropping children off at the moment, and yeah, you absolutely do notice that over the school holidays suddenly it's a breeze to get to work. One of the other things that really excites me about the plan is the Western Rail Trail and the connection for Frankton. And as the committee knows, who wish it, the Mayor, Councillor Gallagher and myself have been beavering away on the Frankton Working Group, and that opportunity has come along for tourism and for heritage as well, to link the bike plan to Frankton and the new neighbourhood plan that we've been working on. So that's pretty exciting. As far as the safety for cyclists being one of the things that keeps people off bikes, it gives me chills every time I come across in the weekend, and it is a lot, big groups of cyclists. I think, are they the Lycra Brigade, those ones? And watching cars in front of me travel past them at 100 and 120 kilometres an hour. And although I didn't bike ride when I was young, I did horse ride, and many, many times cars have done that to me over the years, and I've had some pretty scary accidents. And in the 80s, I also lost a friend from being killed on a bike. So I'm really excited about that as well. And I think that the concerns that Councillor Mallett raised about this plan being risky there's no one that's going to be implementing this plan, NZTA or the council or anyone else that wants to work on it, Te Awa, River Ride, etc., that is going to do anything to put any child on a bike at risk and to change that risk to make it worse than what it is already. So I think the plan is fantastic, and I think the working group has done a tremendous job, and it's really exciting. And I know, Margaret, Councillor Forsyth, you've been waiting for this for a really long time. So well done. Thank you. Any further speakers? Would you like to exercise your right to reply?
If I may. Look, I think just in response to some of the comments around risk, I think, the same could be said for driving cars. I mean, hundreds of people, including children, die on our roads every year, and I don't really think that that's deterred people from getting in the car and driving to where they want to go. There's risk in everything we do, and I think in the main Kiwis are pretty go-get-'em types of people, and they're not going to say I can't because this might happen. And look, I totally agree with Councillor Mallett around Uber and driverless cars. I think any additions or interventions that can really or make better use of our current networks, if that means that there are going to be less vehicles on the roads, then those sorts of additions sitting alongside public transport and cycling is only going to be a good thing for us. We're getting better use of the money that we currently spend, or will be looking forward in the future to spend for people in the general use. So yeah, look, Uber, driverless cars, any other sorts of modern, technologically advanced options that we know about or don't know about yet are only going to be a good thing. That's all I have to say.
Right,
Thanks.
thank you. So I'm going to put that to the vote. That's been moved by Councillor Forsyth, seconded by Councillor McPherson. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against? Councillor Mallett is against. Great, thank you. Thank you for coming, Harry. Thanks, Chris. Okay, now we're going to whip back to the minutes. Item 5, committee on page 5. These are the minutes for the 8th of April Strategy and Policy Committee meeting. I can confirm that those are true and accurate records, and I will move those. Are there any questions arising from the minutes or matters arising from the minutes? No? Do I have a seconder? Yep. Thank you. Councillor King seconding that. Any debate? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? That's carried, thank you. Right, item 7, Older Persons Plan on page 16. And I want to welcome Peggy Koopman-Boydman. Welcome, Peggy. Where am I? Page 16. Right. Oh. Page 16, page 16. Right, you can take the report as read. Peggy is the chair of the Older Persons Advisory Panel. So, Peggy, would you like to just open us up and speak on the highlights from your point of view?
You have before you the plan for older people, which has taken us a year to write. And here is in one page our most efficient rendition. I would point out that there are other cities in the area who also have an older person's plan, and Taronga would be the one that some of you may have seen. It's 47 pages long, so I think we may have saved you quite a lot of time to start off with. The purpose is quite clear. Hamilton to be the desirable place to live for older people, and 11.4% of Hamilton's population are older people, people over the age of 65. We then, and I'm not going to go through it for you, but we then itemised 3 important things that we might want to do to that end, make it easier to get access to facilities and services, make it a safe and secure place, and to include older people in the community in a number of ways. If we took away all of our people aged 65 and over, apart from the fact that we might have a slightly different membership on the Hamilton City Council, there would be quite a few people missing. I would just like to mention the fact that Philip was, councillor, was on the group, and I would thank him for his participation. I think I'll leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Peggy. In committee, we've also got Nick Chester, who's the Senior Policy Advisor as well at the table. So you can take the report as read, and we'll open it up for questions. Councillor Mallett?
Asking this in a sensitive way, to what, and I asked this before when we had a workshop on this, to what extent do elderly folk have the same issues as disabled folk?
Some older people over 65 are disabled. Most of them are not.
So, okay, if you're not disabled, what is it that, other than having a great innings and you're over 65, what is it that makes you different?
I think we could say that there are 3 groups. One group of older people who are probably very similar to middle-aged people. At the other end, the group of people who you might call disabled.
Yep.
And the middle group you might call with declining health. And it is the responsibility of the individual and the society to try and keep them from moving from left to right, so to speak. In other words, maintain their sense of well-being as much as we can. And that's partly what this plan is aimed at.
Okay, so to paraphrase, you said, and if I use the analogy, old equals disabled, a third of the people over 65 aren't old or aren't disabled. They just happen to be old in years, but they're not old in body and old in mind.
Correct.
And they're working, they've got friends.
Yes.
Yep, okay. And 2/3 have very similar issues to people who are disabled.
The question really is, if I may paraphrase you,
Yep.
is that older people are the same as any other set of people, same needs and wants perhaps, but they're also different. And they're different in perhaps some declining levels of energy, concentration, and so on. And the plan addresses itself
those
to
things.
all of that group.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes, Peggy or any of the others involved, could you point me in this plan to anything mentioning housing or accommodation for older people? I've searched it 3 or 4 times now and can't see it in the actual plan there, and I didn't notice it in my read of the 2 specifically anyway, in the read of the background document. It would seem to me that in terms of facilities and services to older people, that would be important, not the only issue.
The group debated as to whether we would spend our entire year discussing that topic, because housing for older people is, as you know, a very politically warm topic. We decided that we would stay out of that particular area, partly because when we were writing this, it became a level of controversy at the national level as to whether the central government should be more involved in housing or not. And so housing quite obviously is not included in here, but it is an ongoing and continuing document, and maybe in the next year or so we do include it.
Could I ask then a follow-up question, were any members of the group that looked at it residents in either council or other social housing or pensioner housing of any sort, you know, the supported housing in other words?
Were any members of our group
Yeah.
live there? No. But I personally, as a professional researcher, have interviewed people who do live in social housing, and I would have to say that the social housing that Hamilton City Council is providing is very good. There are some aspects of it that I have actually listed in my research report.
Except it won't be Hamilton's for much longer, but thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Gallagher.
Just questions, and I'll obviously reserve my comment for later, of course. Just picking up perhaps Councillor McPherson's point around the objectives and actions. So basically, moving forward, the older persons advisory panel, you presumably will be monitoring the objectives and actions, and then obviously there's a potential interlink with, say, community forum. I'm just interested in your views in an ideal situation of how you would want to engage with the council with regard to the objectives and actions moving ahead, because plans are great, and this is good, obviously, but we've got to ensure it doesn't just become one of the doorstops.
This advisory group has only been established for the last year, and it is a new advisory group. How the council wishes to work with the panel is, I guess, up to the council. It is my experience working at the national level and advising ministers of government for maybe the last 30 years, that some advisory groups, most advisory groups, focus at the governance level, and so in this particular document we would have outcomes, goals and objectives, and the panel would monitor that. This group has been directed or encouraged, and that's fine, to go to the actions level, which is also the management level.
Right.
I professionally would find it very difficult to monitor the actions, and I would assume that the managers would monitor that part. But in giving you the first plan for older people, the panel will need to be told at what level we would monitor it.
Right.
And I have a meeting with the mayor soon to discuss that.
Because on the actions, clearly, I mean, we would, to me, it would be a 6-monthly or annual
Yes.
report to the committee.
Through you,
No,
Madam
I know that, I've read that.
Recommendation.
In terms of the community forum, and on the community forum, I would expect, personally, I think a 6-monthly would be better than an annual plan. But it seems to me that we'd have those, and there'll be tick boxes and notes and stuff, so we'd go through that, but you'd be at the staff side to do that. What I'm trying to do is just to make sure that, we get the tangible progress reports. I don't know if Deanne could.
If I may, through the chair. The plan will be managed by staff, so all of the actions that you see within the plan will be actually managed across the different businesses within council. It's anticipated that there will be working groups, a working group pulled together of all those business units who are responsible for implementing the actions.
Okay.
They will be managed by Nick Chester. The monitoring of the plan in its entirety will go back to the older persons panel in their meetings that they have on a quarterly basis, and then there will be opportunity for the plan to be actually monitored and reported back formally through strategy and policy.
The other question I'd perhaps ask, moving forward, because I realise that the brief is huge. So if you look at, say, in the health, Councillor McPherson talked about housing, right? And that's multi. It's not just obviously our pension housing units, but across the whole, keeping people in their own homes. They're involving people who are in so-called nursing homes as well. Plus all the work in the DHB contracts, around Alzheimer's, around home help, DSL, all of that. It just seems such a huge area, and I'm wondering the danger you have, trying to work out the brief. To what degree does the panel become very much an advocate across all of those areas, or is your brief, because it's all interconnected to this, and I'm just trying to tease out, if you like, in an ideal world where you see the panel going from this work in
Well-
terms of particularly bringing to our attention some other key issues that we may need to advocate, for example, to the DHB or to government or whatever around welfare of older people?
The City Council can decide. It's up to you as to what level you want it to be continued at the moment. We were asked, or indeed made the decision ourselves, to keep it short.
Right.
But I am reminded of some people will remember the Royal Commission on Social Policy in 1988, and I was asked to write a report similar to this about older people. It was 100 pages long, and it took me and an assistant over 3 months to write. Now, we don't want to spend that amount of time, I'm sure, to do that. But I think it would be quite useful for the panel to follow through on some key issues. I would also inform you that there is also an advisory group to the Waikato District Health Board on older persons, and I happen to chair that too. So all of this has been seen by some members of that group and their comments on the health side.
Is there potential, wearing your multi-hats, for groups such as that, and I'm aware of things like the Age-Wise conferences and all of the great stuff that's happening in that policy stuff, to make sure that we're linking together so that us and other, throughout we're moving in a similar direction? If so
Well, I have to beg the, shall we say, the permission of the council after the event that I already do it.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to an age-wise group for about 250 people under the Waikato District Health Board in 3 weeks' time. And I will take the liberty of talking about this plan.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
If I may, through the chair, in relation to the housing issue that's been raised by both Councillor McPherson and also Councillor Gallagher, a lot of that work will be picked up within the Hamilton Social Housing Plan that the governance group will actually be leading out. So that's why it has not been included in this older person's plan, for that very reason. There is a separate piece of work that will actually address the wider aspect of social housing within Hamilton City itself.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Tooman.
Probably not a question, but a comment if I may.
No, just let me get rid of questions first if there are any others, Councillor. I like to be tidy with these things. Okay. Well, we need a mover and a seconder before we go into comments and debate.
I'll move it.
Councillor Young will
With
move.
a slight amendment to make it to 6 monthly.
To
Item
6
C,
monthly?
instead of annual.
Yeah. Okay. So that's being seconded. The recommendation committee is on page 16. That's being moved by Councillor Young. Do I have a seconder for the Deputy Mayor? And with the amendment of there to be reported 6 monthly through to Councillor Gallagher's committee, Community Forum Subcommittee. Right, so speakers, Councillor Young, did you want to go first, or would you like to allow Councillor Tooman to? He was,
Age before
he was-
beauty.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Councillor Tooman.
I'm just wondering if there's any room in here for, when I look at it, we're under number 2 action, which is the review of parking, etc., and a number of supermarkets now have got senior parking around. When I look down at number 13, which is providing 6 workshops for basically training and technology, one of the things I do notice around is that the sale of mobility scooters is a growth industry in Hamilton. And I can recall off the top of my head a couple of fatalities involving riders of these mobility scooters. And whether or not they're pimping the ride or not to increase the speed of these things, I'm not too sure. But I noticed that some of the speeds which some of these mobility scooters are getting up to on footpaths, with elderly people stepping out from their driveways and that sort of stuff, basically a disaster waiting to happen. Whether or not there could be some training given, maybe from our road safety coordinators or something like that, on the use of these mobility scooters. Would that be possible to include in the plan?
Madam Chair, am I allowed to answer that one?
Well, was that a comment, Councillor Tooman?
It's a comment, really? Yeah.
I thought it was a speech.
It ended up a question. So no, but that's what, we'll just leave it at there. That's what you would like to see.
That's what I want to see.
Yeah, very good. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm one of the members of the Older Person Advisory Panel, and one of the main tasks for the panel is to develop this older person plan. So it's been a year now since the starting development of the plan. So what I'm looking at this plan is, to me, is achievable, something that council or different units come together with some external stakeholders. We're going to work together to achieve this plan. Of course, as the chairperson, Peggy mentioned, this plan actually is a living plan. It's an action by actions, and also the community development staff will be implementing this plan and report back to the Community Forum Subcommittee 6 monthly. And to me, with no doubt, Hamilton is a city of aging population is going to be increased. So to have a plan that is achievable, that able to deliver the outcome. So I highly recommend other fellow councillors to adopt this plan and then let the staff to continue to work on it and report back to the forum, subcommittee, and then just move on from here.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers? Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Chair. Just a personal comment to Peggy Coupon-Boyden. Some of us will have forgotten that she's Professor Peggy Coupon-Boyden. We may have forgotten even that she was Pro-Vice-Chancellor at the University of Waikato. And some of us may not know that, in fact, she is a leading international gerontologist whose views are sought overseas on matters relating to older people. So, Peggy, I just want to say from around this council table, thank you for your contribution. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor McPherson.
Yes, thank you. I certainly echo the Deputy Mayor's comments about Peggy, having worked with her on a couple of occasions in the past. However, I can't bring myself to support this policy because it has got so many gaps in it, and we've identified a couple of them here. I look on the left of the graphic description there, and it says plan purpose. Hamilton is a desirable place to live for older people. I can't think of one older person that wouldn't place their accommodation where they live at the very top or near the very top of their requirements for the desirability of where they live. I think that's key to probably to all of us, in fact, certainly to families, but very, very much so to older people in terms of their security and how they view their life going forwards, the remains of their life. And to not even mention it in a plan means that the plan has a gap. I'm not saying that solutions can be found that easily for some of these issues. It is certainly contentious, as Peggy mentioned. It may well be, as Deanne mentioned, something that has been picked up by another report. But if that were true, why would we mention transport quite specifically in here? Because we've got transport plans to sink a battleship. Some of them are quite good too. But we're still mentioning that in here because that's a specific need for elderly people. And I support that being in there. What about accommodation? It was in the too hard basket. And because it's contentious around this council table and contentious in the community. But to not identify it as an issue and identify the parameters or the differences in the community and the different strands of thinking and the different things that council might be involved in is a mistake. I think this is, to me, this is a draft that is useful to be built on, but not a plan that I would lend my name to. Councillor Gallagher is quite right to mention health issues, probably the other key thing that people would put up at the top. Health, accommodation and family for older people, in my experience working with them. And we really haven't, we've addressed some relatively minor things, in my opinion, around the edge. We've avoided the key issues, and the excuse appears to be because other people are doing work on them or more will happen on them later. Well, look, don't write a plan if it's not really a plan that's relevant to the major needs for that particular group in our community. I'm not trying to knock what's in here. I'm saying it's so insufficient that it's not worth calling a plan, in my opinion, yet. It's well underdone.
Thank you, councillor. Any further speakers? Councillor Gallagher.
I certainly share a number of Councillor McPherson's sentiments, but I will be voting for this document to get the show on the road. And I think in terms of the role of the community forum, if we pass this as a recommendation to council on a 6-monthly basis, I would certainly be wanting to pick up that aspect. And what I would say to the Older Persons Advisory, the panel, is, and I'm sure you, in terms of your own history, you've never been frightened of something that may be contentious, controversial, and we will have different views. There will be different views around this table around the council's involvement, for example, in pension housing. However, the wider issue is what do we need to do as a council to strongly advocate around housing for older people, and you noted how I deliberately said even people in so-called nursing homes, how do we maintain active and involvement? So accommodation for older people varies, you know, from their own homes right through to a so-called rest home, retirement village environment. So I think there's work to be done. I'm really looking forward to making sure that when the community forum does and checklists this with our staff, is that we do have, and probably Peggy's the appropriate person with DHB Population Health, you know, wearing her multi-hats, which Gordon Chesterman has acknowledged, and I acknowledge those too. So we make sure that we have the key players in the one room. What this, however, says to me is even though the well-beings have been taken out of the legislation, here's the news. The well-beings live. The well-beings live. This is an exact example of why local government is involved in well-beings, social well-being. This is not to say that we pay and do everything. We do not. But we use our resources and our advocacy to work with the DHB, to work with government, to work with the not-for-profit sector, to make sure that the quality of life of older Hamiltonians, if we're all fortunate, we get there, if we're all fortunate, is enhanced. And I certainly want to acknowledge, along with others, that the intellectual grunt that the panel now brings to this piece of work along with our staff. So for that reason, I will be supporting its adoption, and I look forward to engaging with the panel along with when the social housing policy is updated in terms of the action list, which we'll be talking about later in the meeting, and making sure all the strands from the council's point of view are put together. And that's also important regionally, because we're part of a Waikato. There's the spatial plan. There's lots of other pieces of work happening. And I won't go on at length about my regular attendance at community health forums around the region, but the issues of transport, all of those things affecting older people throughout the region. How lucky we are actually, some of us, you know, to live in Hamilton compared with the wider region, but I think there's some issues that we should be concerned with as a council. So I will be supporting this and look forward to the community forum rolling up its sleeves with the panel to advance these action points and add to them, as Councillor McPherson has also mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher, and I wholeheartedly support here to the well-beings that they are alive and well, regardless of the changes in legislation. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. This is another one of these things that's going to go out to public consultation, so that's great, because there are parts of this which I think are council business.
No, sorry, Councillor Mallett, no, this is the adoption and then it goes to council. There's been, the chair has, and the working group has worked extensively with stakeholders throughout.
That's been done.
So, yeah, it's been done.
All right, well, okay, well, there are a whole number of things that I wouldn't approve of as being part of council, just simply not part of council business. In your objectives, 1, I think that's great, consideration given to ensuring council facilities are accessible to older people. 2, consideration given to transport and mobility. Those are all clearly council responsibilities. Documents are easy to access. We start to get a little bit shaky when we go city programs of safety and personal wellbeing. Those are some council responsibility, I think. Others are not. Clearly, programs for increased readiness for civil defence, those are certainly our responsibilities. 6, older people well informed, that's council. Then we start getting into stuff where there are other parts of the community, and housing is one of those, where the community can do it a hell of a lot better than we can. And I don't know why we're getting involved in some of these things, that ethnic diversity of our older residents is celebrated. Why is that a council thing? That's just what life is. Contributions to what older people in Hamilton do, celebrate, acknowledge. Well, that's just what life is. That's what people do. People say, thanks for helping out at the fair, thanks for da-da-da. We get people involved in sports clubs and bowling clubs and all sorts of things. The council doesn't have to be involved in that. I don't know why we try and intrude in some of the sectors where we are useless at it, and it's actually not our place. So I'm concerned that we're overreaching dramatically in some of these.
Okay, thank you. Any further speakers? No. So the recommendation committee is on page 16 and has been moved by Councillor Young and seconded by the Deputy Mayor with the change to 6 monthly reporting. So I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Aye.
Are there any against?
Yep. Gary, you were for or against?
Well,
Everybody pick one, come on.
Councillor
Come on, Gary.
Councillor Bellis is sitting on the
He's
bench
decided.
again.
Okay, so you're... All right, thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you very much, Peggy, for all the work that you've done on this. Your Worship, councillors, we're going to break for 10 minutes for afternoon tea.